So the meeting is now going live onto YouTube and it's also being recorded. Over to you, Chairman.
Still muted, Paul.
Yeah, you're muted.
There we go. For those unable to lip read, let us start again. Good morning. Welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual Exmouth Queen's Drive Delivery Group meeting today, the 15th of October 2020. I will be chairing the meeting. I'm Councillor Paul Arnott. I'd also like to welcome everyone watching via live streaming. Everybody here today is taking part remotely, of course. And so can you please bear this in mind? We're live on YouTube. Be careful with your language. That obviously applies to you too, members. The code of conduct applies throughout the meeting. And unfortunately, we have to reserve the right if anybody disrupts that we may disconnect you by whatever means, it says here. So also, please turn off any telephone devices or set them to silent, which I shall be doing at this very minute. As it's dependent upon internet connection and a power supply, if that breaks down, we will do our best to reconnect as soon as possible. But if after 15 minutes we haven't, I'm afraid we will have to adjourn and reconvene at a later date, and there'll be details about that on the website. Please make sure during the meeting, please, that your own microphones are muted so we don't get feedback. And the usual one here, doesn't apply to all of you, but to some of you, can keep your points short. That's very welcome. And don't repeat points that have already been made. This is members, not members of the public. And obviously don't interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand. That applies to members of the public who haven't used this technology before. There's a little button you press and there's blue hands turn up next to the members' names. Everybody's been sent the agenda for today's meeting. But if you haven't managed to find it, it's on the website, eastdevon.gov.uk. So we'll now start with Alethea, please, doing a roll call of committee members here present. And if you can unmute your microphones, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. And when you have confirmed, please go to mute again. Thank you,
I'll do the roll call, Chairman.
Thanks, Chris.
Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Hayward. Councillor Armstrong.
Oh, hello. Are you doing the roll call? My sound, the sound went off then. I couldn't hear anybody.
Right.
So yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Councillor Davey. Councillor Davey, I've seen you.
He's might be slightly delayed.
I'm just. I was typing a message to say, can anybody else not hear Paul? And then I had to move the mouse back in. Yes, I am here.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen you. Councillor Hookway.
Present.
Councillor Coleman. Councillor Ledger.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Taylor. I haven't seen Brenda. Councillor Wibley.
Present.
Councillor Chris Wright.
Present.
Chairman, I can confirm we are quorate today.
Thank you, Chris, very much indeed for that. We now go to item 1 on the agenda, which is particularly important today. And thank you so much to, I have 7 listed speakers. Officers shout if we missed anybody. And you're very welcome here today. You've got 3 minutes. And if you go past 3 minutes and somebody's timing it, you'll probably get some kind of rude noise made. So if you can wrap it up as fast as possible after that. Don't feel you have to speak for 3 minutes though. So first we've got listed to speak, and please take your time. We've got Julie Gash.
Hi there. Hello, my name's Julie Gash. You want me to start now?
Yes, please. 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Hi. So I moved to from Sheffield to Exmouth almost 5 years ago, and I decided to move from the cold industrial north with my partner to somewhere which had a gentler climate and had a beautiful coastline. And Exmouth had that in buckets. What was the drawback for me and my partner was that it seemed to be a little bit tired in terms of the offer on the seafront as well as the town itself. But we saw that as a great potential. We'd always lived in a city which was constantly going through regeneration. So that was always part of our lives. And therefore we saw that as actually a positive. And we felt it could evolve into a destination which could attract people to come and visit as well as like us to live. So we moved here. The vision I saw was one where it could translate into, say, contemporary cafe culture, architecturally interesting leisure and play areas. Spaces that are designed for people to share with others outdoor, which was also good to look at, and where they could enjoy the great Exmouth outdoors. What I saw currently was mainly car parking spaces, sound and amusements, which were charming but not that engaging. I therefore got involved in the Hemingway Regeneration Project pretty much from the get-go and have been connected through it throughout. I believe that the Hemingway Project brings an attractive and contemporary beach lifestyle experience, which does connect with both visitors and locals alike. It ticks lots of boxes, but not all. Nothing's going to tick every box. But I do believe it will draw in tourists as well as providing a really nice space for residents too. So looking at the regeneration projects, I do see the Hemingway Regeneration Project. I do see contemporary cafe culture, play and leisure areas, which will be a nice place for people to spend time. The hotel will provide tourists with a luxurious, but for many affordable place to stay. So they can also experience the contemporary coastal culture that Exmouth can then offer. In doing so, I believe it will bring in much needed income to the town and the local economy, which in the current times is more important than it's ever been. So as an Exmouth resident now and a businesswoman, I support the Hemingway Regeneration Project and think it is a good offer for Exmouth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Julie, for that. So just to ask the next public speaker to get ready, please, which is Laura Woodward-Drake. Let me know when you're ready, Laura.
Good morning. Yes, I'm ready. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Fabulous. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'd like to introduce myself as the new chair of the Exmouth Chamber of Commerce. Ian has moved to Tavistock, so I'm here looking after Exmouth. I've been on the chamber for the last 5 years as well. The chamber motto is growing stronger together, and I think that's very powerful at the moment, especially during the current situation. And I ask of you that you use that as a motto, as a committee, to grow stronger together and an opportunity to move forward instead of focusing heavily on the problems of the past. I echo quite what Julia's saying. saying I also moved here from a city, town. I came from Woking and Reading area to here, which is a beautiful place, and the Hemingway plans really did re-energise the seafront, which was in much need of re-energising. I know there are concerns over the plans, but from a business point of view, as the chair of the chamber, I thought the plans combined business and beauty very, very well. It created the leisure experience, but also provided culture. I know there's concerns over the hotel aspect and the fact that we have other hotels in the area, but as proven by the fact that we have a Costa, a Starbucks, but we also have independent coffee shops like the Cabin doing well. It's not competition, it's collaboration. There are different markets and hotels can benefit from that. I also speak to you from the position of the manager of the local language school. I run Hello Exmouth, and we are responsible for bringing over 4,000 international visitors to Exmouth a year. When we bring our visitors down to the seafront at the moment, it is still tired, but the temporary uses were fantastic. We hosted festivals, we hosted collaborative nights for our junior students. We need a place that we can really show off to our visitors because we are bringing 4,000 of them to the town every year. 75% of which return every year, and the opportunity to have them return with their kids when they're older is fantastic. And finally, I speak to you as a young person who lives in the town. If that is evident, I'm not sure. I know one of the really concerns for the design was that it was to get young people to live, work and play here. And I think the Hemingway design did that perfectly. I've stayed here because I got a job here, but I used to live in Exeter. And Exeter is constantly changing, evolving. And I think that's something we need to do here. I know there are concerns over people taking on the project, but as proven in the Lambert, Smith and Hampton survey, soft marketing survey, there were people that were interested, but you're not going to know until you market. So I'd like to do a full circle of growing stronger together. Use this as an opportunity to move forward. The Hemingway design project ticked many of the boxes, but you're not going to please everybody. But I think it's an amazing thing, and I would like to get it moving because we've wasted a lot of time with the past. So let's move on to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, very much. Just to give a 10-second warning to Justin Moore coming up next. Justin, if you can unmute yourself. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be able to speak today, particularly being from a demographic that I feel often doesn't speak due to being at work with a young family. One I feel now is quite underrepresented. I've had the fortune of spending my 18-year career in the tourism and hospitality industry, both on a local level and national level, and been involved in the development and launch of multi-million-pound developments. The Queen's Drive development represents a fantastic opportunity for Exmouth that we cannot allow to slip through our fingers. The Hemingway design was well presented and delivered balance as well, and balance is the key here. A bespoke hotel attracting a different clientele to Exmouth. This hotel will in particular complement the sideshore development currently taking place. Enthusiasts will turn from day visitors to what we in the industry call short breakers and stay. And that will take Exmouth from a staycation location during the summer to an all year round destination. Create jobs and bring another demographic of visitor to this wonderful town. The play events and mixed use space is highlighted by residents. It's loved. The fantastic dinosaur park and outdoor space has become a hit, which we cannot afford to lose, but should develop further and is inclusive in this new vision. To say I was apprehensive of all these new things starting to happen to the seafront I grew up and loved wouldn't be wrong at all. I was very, but I now see change and positive change at that. And those fond memories that my parents have and photos of me have at those destinations are now echoed by the laughter and fun of my children and countless others in the dinosaur park. And that is what the free-to-use space needs to be all about and must be included. Hemingway Design have listened to Exmouth and come up with a comprehensive and balanced plan for this town and the further prosperity of it. Indications from 2020 bookings from holiday parks show the staycation and leisure industry will without question boom for the next 5 years, and Exmouth needs to be a part of that boom. This council, and I'm going to be slightly controversial here, this council needs to deliver for the people of Exmouth. This situation is fast becoming the Brexit of Exmouth, and our community demands security and prosperity in these troubling times. And one final note, I'm going to leave with a Greek proverb, and it's not intended to upset or frustrate anybody, but a society grows great when older generations plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Justin, for that thoughtful contribution from Greek literature at the end. I'll see if I can match you at my agenda item coming up. Next coming up, please, will be Ivor Jones. Ivor, let me know when you're unmuted and ready to go, please.
I'm ready to go.
Oh, right. Thank you very much. In your own time.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for allowing me to speak to you today. My name's Ivor Jones, and I'm the station manager of National Coast Watch Exmouth. We're a uniformed and trained service, a registered charity staffed by volunteers, with some 70 watchkeepers at Exmouth and nearly 3,000 nationwide. The NCI operates around the UK coastline and reports directly to Her Majesty's Coast Guard. We work closely with the RNLI, lifeguards, Border Force, local authorities, police and other agencies. We're located in the tower adjacent to the existing Harbourview Cafe on Queen's Drive. NCI Exmouth is one of an expanding network of some 56 stations around the UK. It's consistently the third or fourth busiest station with recorded incidents in these difficult and dangerous waters. We've been established in Exmouth for 22 years, and our continued ability to operate is entirely dependent on the aim of the Queen's Drive development. Our operational reach is currently being extended with the installation of 2 new CCTV systems, one located at the new sideshore development and looks east towards Auckland Point, and the other will be positioned at the ex-sailing club and will look north up the estuary. Both these areas have previously not been visible to us because of buildings and other features obstructing the views. Her Majesty's Coast Guard has often asked us if we could see this or that incident in these obscure areas, and of course we can't. We simply can't. To accommodate our normal 2 watchkeepers, plus all the new CCTV monitors, associated equipment, and all the kit that's necessary, and probably an additional watchkeeper to help operate the camera systems, we'll need approximately 25 square meters of lookout space. Additional to the lookout space, we must also have a training and storage facility, absolutely crucial. This is essential to ensure that all our watchkeepers acquire and update the skills necessary for us to retain our declared facility status and enable us to maintain our role in the UK's search and rescue structure. Exmouth NCI is self-funded and enjoys great local support. We exist for the benefit of Exmouth residents, visitors and water users, and take our place as part of the national SAR network. Given the level of local support, we feel that if we can provide added value in some way, that would be a worthy aim. If a visitors centre could somehow be incorporated into the design of the new facility, that would be of real interest to residents, visitors and the general community. And NCI Exmouth would love to play its part. There's so much to shout about in this fantastic location. The wonderful ex-estuary at the western end of the Jurassic Coast, the wonderful wildlife, the boating activity, the fabulous beaches.
Sorry, your time is up.
The list goes on.
Okay, if you can last 20 seconds or so, please, Ivor.
If a visit, yes, beg your pardon. Given the increasing popularity of Exmouth and the huge increase in water users as a result of the sideshore development, and we often see 70 or 80 kite surfers flying around Pole Sands, as a result of the sideshore development, the demand for an effective and efficient NCI station at Exmouth will be ever more evident. After 22 years, it would be a great shame to compromise our ability to provide our watchkeeping services as a result of unsuitable or inadequate facilities. An inspiring, impressive and iconic building located at the best position on the seafront would benefit NCI Exmouth, but also the community at large and visitors alike. Our presence in Exmouth could then continue and our important role as part of the UK search and rescue structure be maintained. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ivor, very much for that. Very much appreciated. Coming up next, please, we have Mr. Gordon Hodgson. In your own time, please, Gordon, when you're ready. You're on mute at the moment, Gordon, there. Take your time.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're live.
Okay. Okay. Good morning, and thanks for hearing me. I'm lived in Exmouth for 48 years and have children and grandchildren in the town. I want to focus on the future. Therefore, I urge the new group looking at these things to, 1, run a thorough reality check on the briefing information. 2, unburden the site from the need to raise excessively large sums from the site. That's phase 3. 3, actively promote and encourage a wider range of ideas for the site and genuinely involve the public in the decision-making process. Consider running a design competition for the Harbour View site, which includes options to preserve the heritage value of the buildings. 5, remove any requirement for a hotel or holiday accommodation as a given. 6, reduce to a minimum the claim of commercial sensitivity to conceal information which we should be entitled to. I believe the briefing paper is incomplete and biased and inaccurate for the things it omits as well as those included. Better outcomes surely would be achieved with the genuine involvement of the public and by encouraging a wide range of people to come forward with ideas and proposals about how the site can be developed. Phase 3 I'm talking about. That's what those who voted convincingly in the town poll of 2016 wanted. The Phase 3 site is expected to deliver too high a level of financial return. Not only is it expected to pay for the road diversion, but also potentially the construction of an 80-bedroom hotel that people responding to the Hemingway survey didn't rank highly as desirable. Initially, the council stated that they expected to receive grants, etc., to finance the road realignment. When grant applications failed, the council said it would be funded from reserves. It's also been said that the requirement of Phase 3 development needs to pay for the road realignment. The site needs to be unburdened from this artificial demand, which limits other beneficial uses. The road realignment was said to be necessary for Grenadier to promote the building of the restaurant and the water sports centre. That business enjoys a peppercorn rent for 125 years. Why should they not be repaying the road costs over a longer period after the estimated 25 years required to repay building costs to Grenadier? Alternatively, abide by the statement made by the Chief Executive Officer that reserves will pay for the road. Any developer offered Harbourview with a hotel at the rear will call the shots on how the whole site is developed. For me, not such a good prospect. It seems hotel chains prefer other organisations, including councils, to bear the construction risk, amongst others. We need to know much more. We need to know much more about how that is supposed to benefit Exmouth and East Devon. And that's leaving aside the fact that people didn't want a hotel there in the first place. The Queen's Drive group needs to make sure their price is unbiased, current, and factoring in issues around finance and the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gordon, for that and for bringing it just about on time there. Coming up next, please, is Daphne Courier. Daphne, when you're ready, please. How are we doing, Daphne? Are you still on mute? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll skip past Daphne while I can't see or hear her at the moment and go to Sally Goldsworthy. Are you ready to go? Yes.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. So off you go, please, Sally. Thank you.
Okay. I am going to be negative, but I am very much in favour of what Julia, Laura and Justin said. I am also a businesswoman, and I think Exmouth has a very good future under this new administration. But what you're not aware of is the history of this sorry saga of the seafront. I'm going to give you 3 examples now, and I'll be as brief as I can, of democracy in the past being bypassed. Most of you will be aware there was a public case of a personal vendetta of one of the businesses on the front. I've got evidence of another. A business at their own expense spent £10,000 producing a set of plans to revamp their area. They were advised, sadly, to approach senior officers and not their local councillors, who I can assure you the Lytton councillors never knew anything of the subsequent negotiations. The negotiations deteriorated because it obviously didn't suit the negotiators for the council. And today I'm making public that I've got the email correspondence here. I put it in front of a Tory councillor who was then a councillor for Lytton, and he confirmed the councillors had nothing to do with it. My question was at scrutiny, who is actually running this council? And the good news is we have a new administration. My second example is the plans, the sorry plans for this hotel, and that's where I part company with the other 3. From the conversation with Tory councillors then in power, there have been 6 years of soft marketing of this site. Nobody wants it. And at the last attempt, there were 6 bids for the Harbourview site, I'm told, and none at all for the hotel yet again. I'm in favour of a boutique hotel, but not here. The locals will tell you why this site is not suitable, the price that would have given it away, so it's got to be the location. Example 3, the Ocean Building, fabulous building. What a wasted opportunity. It's losing money hand over fist. So why did the council secretly buy it and pay full price? Ocean particulars, just to fill you in, 125-year lease, peppercorn rent, sit-in tenant, 25-year lease, break clause at 12 years. 3 years, no takers. The owner was in debt to £3.5 million. The bank, a high street bank, owned the Ocean. I took professional opinion how the council would stand if the Quinn went bust. If the bank foreclosed and didn't sell it, the 125-year lease would fall and revert to the council. So why did they pay full price for it when it languished on the market for 3 years? Who was driving this decision? So there you go. That's the past. We've now got the future. My answer to the future is scrap this report. It's totally biased that's on the table now from the officers, and there's masses of massaging the facts there. And if anybody wants to talk to me about it, I can give you plenty more evidence. And it reminds us that the old Exmouth councillors were never in the driving seat. They were being fed misinformation. So my call to arms is this: scrap it, start again. The Ocean needs to be rethought. Why can't we put the spaces out within that building, put out to private tender and see who wants to go in there and run successful businesses? Phase 3, in my view, should be stunning outdoor attractions, so we become a sought after destination. Harbourview needs revamping. This is a new administration, a new broom. To coin a phrase, these stables need cleaning. Go to it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Galsworthy, for that. Now, I don't know if anybody can help me, Alethea or Chris. Do we see Daphne Courier?
Yes, I'm using my daughter's computer, so it'll come up as Louisa. Have you got the wrong name there?
No, in which case, Daphne, in the guise of Louisa, please go ahead with your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Last time I looked, I was living in a democracy where the public voice was legitimate. Save Exmouth Seafront campaigned fairly and openly to put the public opinion to the district council because it was felt by many people that the public voice was being ignored. The paragraph on page 8 of the recent statement needs correction. I asked to go on the visioning exercise referred to, but was not allowed. Only one representative was allowed from SES. The council had full control of who was invited, so it is not a valid criticism to infer that we were favoured. Attendees were split into groups to pool ideas. I asked what had happened, and I was told nothing really to report, apart from the fact that Wayne Hemingway apparently stated that of all the places he had visited, Exmouth was the least in need of regeneration. The constitution of Save Exmouth Seafront had 3 main objectives: to support local businesses, to demand independent consultation, and to stand against inappropriate development. Objective 1, to support local businesses, includes water sports. Save Exmouth Seafront was never against a water sports centre. If the council had paid £3.x million building their own water sports centre instead of moving a road, they could have taken revenue from it from day one. Objective 2, to demand independent consultation. At the council-run Wayne Hemingway presentation in the Ocean building, the option of a hotel came bottom on the council's own questionnaire. It was on a placard on a table. Least popular option, hotel. It's the most unpopular idea. What is the point of a consultation if the people driving it, driving the decisions, take no notice of the public response? Previous to this, 14,515 people, Exmouth residents, voted in the town poll, huge number. Over 95% of these people requested further independent consultation. That was before the Wayne Hemingway thing. They were not happy with the plans for the Queen's Drive, but the same plans were revisited. No change. And again, fewer than 5% of the voters were happy with the plans. So what's the point of consultation if the results are just ignored and people continue to sing from the same hymn sheet? Objective 3, to stand against inappropriate development. This is development which is excessive in terms of demands on infrastructure and services or impacts on local amenity and character. But who would willingly promote?
3 minutes is up.
So that's a legitimate aim. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Daphne, indeed, for that. Alethea and Chris, I don't believe we have any other public speakers who registered to speak, but give me a shout if I'm wrong.
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you, Alethea, for that very much. Right, agenda item 2, welcome from the chairman. Chair, I leap to say. Right, so I'm 58. I first came to Exmouth 50 years ago with my parents as a South London boy and had one of the most awkward lunches of my life with my slightly peculiar Uncle George, who had a wooden leg, at the Imperial Hotel. And it was like a scene from 40 Towers. Starched tablecloths, oxtail soup, 8-year-old boy sitting there terrified. So Exmouth didn't get off to a very good start for me. And then 40 years ago, last week, I arrived as a student, a psychology student at Exeter University. And for the next 4 years, I would come down from St James's Station in Exeter and I would, believe it or not, go running on the beach there and spend most of the summers with friends down there. And those sands and that, I suppose, relatively undeveloped town, but distinguished Victorian Edwardian town, left me with some of the happiest memories of my life. And so when I moved back down here with my family 20 years ago, we've been going ever since. Regular, the kids got 4 kids, and we went. So I was very upset to hear about 3 years ago that despite the best efforts of many local people, officers and members of the council, that whatever has been happening in Exmouth was getting into a little bit of a pickle. And so there are 2 things we need to achieve today. The first is we must look to the future. And I think that will come in the latter part of the meeting. But if I'm going to match Mr. Moore with his Greek quotes, I'm just going to offer him the old George Santayana Spanish philosophy quote that you've all heard before, haven't you? Those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. So there is an aspect of this where we do need to make peace with the past. There is clearly information that's been given today by public speakers which isn't in accord with what is being said elsewhere. So for any of those public speakers who are minded to write to me with what you've said today, please do. My email address is on the website, and we'll give that proper consideration as we move forward. The second thing I'd like to say is that I am chairing this committee today in my role as leader of the council, and that's why I'm chairing it. But I think it would be appropriate at the earliest opportunity where full peace has broken out and we are all moving ahead together, for me to step aside and for perhaps a member from Exmouth to chair this moving forward. My view is that just for the first few meetings, it's actually perhaps helpful to have somebody objective from the outside get you through these first hard yards. So, but I'm very happy to be sacked by you all at the end of this meeting. So I'm not going to cling on, but that's what I'm very happy to do. And then finally, I would say that we've got to get on with this because the tourism, well, as we know down here, the tourism season goes on practically forever. 2 things have happened. COVID happened. I live in the tourist area, Colleton and Seaton. We had the worst Easter ever and one of the best summers ever. And now it still seems to be going. We don't know where this is going. Clearly, economically, it has changed the prospects for various aspects of the current plan at Queen's Drive, whether it be some of the attractions, whether it be the viability or not of building a new hotel, and we need to take that into consideration. But I think what we must have at the front of our minds by the end of this meeting is what we're doing next spring, ready for the next season, because we need stuff down there. And if we haven't got that sorted within the next month or so, then we will be letting the community down. So that's quite enough from me. Alethea, could I ask, and Chris, could I ask you please to do a roll call of the members of this committee and in regard of any declarations of interest they may wish to make? Chris, are you there?
Chris, you're muted.
I'm muted. Right. Declarations of interest, Chairman. Councillor Art?
None, Chris.
Councillor Hayward's not present, I believe.
None.
Councillor
I am here, Chris. Yeah, no, no interest, thank you.
No interest, thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
None.
Councillor Davey?
Exmouth Town Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway?
Yes, prior to my election in May 2019, I was the chair of Save Exmouth Seafront and was also the author of the Exmouth Egg proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman?
We had an
Ledger?
apology from Councillor Coleman.
Yeah. Councillor Ledger?
None, thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Councillor Whibley?
I am an Exmouth Town Councillor.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Chris Wright?
Little and Ward Councillor, former tenant. No active interest.
Yeah, active interest. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I can confirm we are therefore quorate today and may go ahead with the meeting. Chris, can I ask you, do we have any apologies today?
Councillor Brenda Taylor and Councillor Andrew Coleman, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, the first item of business which we need to get on to is to do with the terms of reference for this committee. Now, if I may say so, I think they are something that we need to have as our, as our guide moving forward. And I'm very interested in a discussion today. I am minded that if you want to revise them in any way, we can also have a look at these and updating these at the next meeting as well, because I don't really want to go in for hours of debate on it today. So very helpful for if by the means of showing blue hands, anybody who'd like to speak on that, do please let me know. And I have Councillor Paul Miller to start.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Chair, that we should revisit these in more detail. But given that we've had, and I want to thank the 6 public speakers who've spoken today, and they all made extremely interesting contributions. I mean, these terms of reference was written at a time when this meeting was invitation only and only had a few councillors on it, so it wasn't heard in public. So I thought it might be an idea to add a new clause to the terms of reference to say something along the lines of to provide a forum which facilitates public engagement to shape the swift and successful delivery of Exmouth Queen's Drive redevelopment phase 3. But I think the historic problem with this project is it just hasn't had the public engagement to give the public confidence that the ideas are a good one. So I think that would be a good idea. It will show that this new administration is genuinely taking the views of the public seriously and allowing those ideas to shape what we do going forward on phase 3.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Would anybody else like to speak on that? If not, I mean, perhaps it might be, if it's helpful from the chair, that I could just propose that we note these draft terms of reference for now, and that we include them at this point in the agenda of our next meeting for updating. Nick Hookway, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say I support Councillor Miller's proposals. The fourth paragraph up from the bottom of the document actually could well be removed because it talks about inviting individuals with relevant expertise on a one-off basis. Well, I don't think we want that. I think that's contrary to what Councillor Miller has suggested. So I would recommend that sentence be removed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Any other members of the committee want to say anything on this at this stage? In which case, I have said from the chair, could we please look to continue to review these until the next meeting and have them as an agenda item then? Would anybody like to second that as a proposal?
I will second that, Councillor Arnott. Okay,
that's Councillor Whibley, I think. Thank you very much. Alethea or Chris, I think. I'm not quite sure which one of you is doing. Can we just take a? Well, let's do. Let's do it by blue hands. So, if you are in favour of that committee, could you just raise your blue hands?
For Councillor Arnott.
Yes, Alethea, please.
Yes, could we perhaps do the green ticks or the red crosses? Would be an easier way.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that. Yes, right. Thank you. So it's green ticks for yes and red crosses for no, please.
I'm not voting. I don't have a voting right.
How are we doing, Alethea? Have we got votes in?
So we appear to have 7 votes for your proposal to continue to note and review the terms of reference and to include these on the next agenda.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that, everybody. Right, so now we've got, I'm very grateful for him appearing here today. So Mr. Tim Child is the service lead at East Devon District Council for place, assets and commercialisation, and he's going to give us and I've seen it, a short PowerPoint presentation. I'm very grateful for him to doing that. So if I can hand over to you, Tim, when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to load up. I'm using 2 computers for this purpose, so I'm just going to load up and share screen on my PowerPoint.
Okay, take your time.
For a second.
I shall tap dance for a few minutes while you do this. And lovely.
Okay, you should all now be looking at a presentation of photograph.
That's good.
That's reassuring to hear. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk today just for 10 to 15 minutes. It's going to be quite a short presentation, and I'm going to cover the following points. So I'm going to do a bit of an introduction first about both myself and my role in the project, and also my approach to the project, really. I want to cover off milestones achieved to date. I want to talk through briefly consultations and visioning work, current position, commercial element, and temporary planning consent, and then round off, I suppose, in terms of support to members and resource implications. So moving on first to I suppose, my introduction. So the purpose of my presentation is to provide a brief overview of the current position for Queen's Drive redevelopment and to be considered alongside the briefing note attached to today's agenda. I want to enable members to understand where we are now, what the options are from here, and what the issues are that need to be addressed in the near future. Whilst I've had some limited involvement previously, it's only really this year that I've had any real involvement with this project now sitting within my service area. My lack of historic involvement with this project means that I can bring a fresh pair of eyes to this, albeit I'll be the first to admit that I don't have a detailed knowledge of all of the background. However, I do have officers, colleagues, staff who do. I have no preconceptions. The briefing note and chronology are factual, but nevertheless, I am very aware, and I'm hearing this already for this meeting, of the very strong feeling by members, but by the public too, towards this project on both sides. And I think we've heard that in terms of the public speakers so far. And I genuinely want to support members to find a way forward that supports everyone's aspirations and builds trust and confidence in this project. Hopefully this presentation and background documents, hopefully the presentation and background documents will help in your discussions and deliberations about what you want to do next. I hope that the chronology provided with the agenda will at least give you a flavour of the consultation and the visioning work and the various decisions that have been taken by members over the last 10 years, following extensive consultation and visioning work that have driven forward the actions by officers on this project and led us to where we are today. The briefing note that we have provided therefore focus predominantly on the more recent parts of that work, of the work that's been done, particularly the work through Hemingway Design and Lambert Smith Hampton on phase 3, predominantly. But you will see that the chronology of activities, which is also included, does date back to 2011. So, milestones achieved. So I want to cover this because we've got a long way. We've still got a long way to go, but we've got a long way so far. So we have a newly aligned road, which has opened up a large stretch of a site with direct access to the beach. That was really, really important in terms of placemaking and directly linked to the very early work around the master planning. We also have a new car park. We also have Sideshore, the new water sports centre going up. That's in its own right creating jobs, visitors, outdoor space, and also a financial legacy to the residents of Exmouth through the CIC. And it's that financial legacy that I think sometimes isn't necessarily picked up. And also we have the temporary uses on the phase 3 site, which have proven really, really popular, have demonstrated different ways in which the site can be utilised. So what we are now focusing on is part of a much bigger project, this being the last, but nevertheless, very, very important part of that jigsaw puzzle. So moving on to consultation and visioning work. We've done lots of consultation events and studies over many years. I'm not proposing now to go through these in detail, but I think it's useful to remind ourselves. We've got the 2010 master plan. We've got the 2012 Exmouth Splash proposals. We've got the 2015 Exmouth economic plan. We've got the consultation that was undertaken by Councillor Armstrong. We've got a 2016 visitor survey. We've got a 2016 town poll. The town poll in 2016 asked for more consultation, which we then did. We've got the planning application consultations as the planning consents have gone through. There's a huge amount of information there. More recently, we've got the Queen's Drive Space User Survey and also the Hemingway Design Vision. Design work and the consultation and the vision that came out of that. So we have lots of information from people in the town alongside expert advice from placemaking and design consultants, economists, market research experts, and also commercial property advisors around the opportunities that are available. The key challenge, I suppose, now is what do we do with this information? As I've already, just through the public speakers at the beginning of this meeting, I can see that there's still not a clear, agreed way forward. And I sense, to be honest, after all of this work, there should be by this stage. So that's something that we all need to address moving forward. So moving on to the current position. So in February, Cabinet agreed to adopt the recommendations that were put forward by Hemingway Design and Lambert Smith Hampton. Now that's referred to within, as you'd expect, within the briefing note itself. But I think there's two important points to note. That only by marketing the site will a council know if there is interest from developers on the site, what sort of interest and what quality and financial offer that opportunity presents. The council's also not obliged to accept any offers that come forward, but that information that could come forward would help inform decisions. Currently, as we know, the project is currently on hold. And I just want to say a little bit more about this. It therefore remains an option, only an option, but it remains an option that the council could complete the work undertaken by Hemingway Design and LSH by taking the site to the market to test developer interest. Following agreement of a selection panel and selection criteria, this could be progressed. And if it were to be, then I would suggest next spring. Lambert Smith Hampton recommended marketing for a hotel operator and restaurant / cafe operator in the first instance to identify the interest. And in the case of a hotel operator, the location within the phase 3B site, approximately a third of that site area. The uses on the remainder of the phase 3B would be considered thereafter with a further marketing opportunity. The proposal, and this was set out in quite a lot of detail within the Cabinet paper earlier this year, so I don't plan to go into this in detail, but the proposal was a two-stage marketing exercise. Each stage having two-part process attached to it. So with expressions of interest before we get to the stage of detailed offers. So by progressing to that stage, if members were to be so minded, we are not committing to a direction of travel. We are merely testing the market and providing the information for members to then make decisions. I've read lots from members that they don't think there's a market. We're in a particularly challenging time at the moment with coronavirus, so that could well be a good way of testing it so that we know and we have the evidence one way or another. Next, I want to just touch on the commercial element because, again, I've picked up from the public speakers that this is a huge issue of contention. So the commercial element, it was agreed by Cabinet back in January 15 and also again in November 2016, and hence the current instruction to officers around the commercial side. We needed to secure a commercial element within redevelopment of phase 3 that would provide a financial return. Now, early on, that was around offsetting towards costs of the road and car park. But it's fair to say that, well, following the Hemingway visioning work, the council recognised and committed to there being elements of free play and free to access public realm areas. And the use of these had been successfully demonstrated by the temporary uses. So there is a setup cost and ongoing running costs, as we all know. And in the absence of other funding, a commercial element was therefore identified as necessary in order to pay for these and maintain them. The alternative, on the other hand, could be a pay-to-enter facility operated by a private operator. So that's where the commercial element came from. But ultimately, it's for members in terms of the future direction. Now moving on to the temporary planning consent. The briefing note, I think, sets out quite clearly that the current temporary consent expires in March 2022. In 2019, when that temporary consent was first renewed, there was a quite reasonable expectation, but at the time we got to 2022, we'd have a planning permission, legal agreements entered into, and works ready to commence. So we do have a 2022 date that we need to be very mindful of. So I suppose that sort of raises sort of two obvious questions. Firstly, what will temporary arrangements be for next year? And that has already been picked up on by Councillor Arnott in terms of needing to move forward with that particular item very quickly. But also, and secondly, what is the long-term permanent development solution, and how does that impact on any thoughts to explore potential for a new temporary consent? So there's some things that need some considering there, and considering fairly quickly. And now I'm on to my final slide. So officers are ready to work to support members, whatever it is that members choose to take forward. Whilst past decisions might have proven unpopular over time to some, as officers, our role was to take forward the activities agreed by Cabinet or Council, which themselves came from the results of the consultation and visioning works. And you'll see this from the chronology of activities. Secondly, once the next steps are scoped out by members, from a resourcing perspective, I will consider how best to support that in terms of officers and or additional consultants. Once we have a better steer on the likely direction, to a degree, possibly the commercial element or not, which will impact on the types of skill sets needed. And I suppose my very final thing I want to say is this is a great opportunity to complete the final stage of Queen's Drive project, working together with members, residents and businesses to bring forward a scheme that reflects the aspirations of all, supports Exmouth and provides a sustainable legacy for its current and future generations. And as I've said earlier, it is the final crucial part of a jigsaw, and we need to, as a council, have over time a clear direction on where this is going. That's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. If you can, I know you are, hand back the screen. Lovely. Oh, look, there's a very old photograph of me. That's the horrific current reality. So thank you for that. So to point out for members of the public and other officers and also members of the council, as Tim has said, he's relatively new to this. There was an officer, the former Deputy Chief Executive, who was very involved in it all. Some of you may remember Mr. Richard Cohen, who's no longer employed by the council. So I have asked our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Mark Williams, to be in attendance here today. So any questions that come forward that may be not within Tim's living memory, so to speak, hopefully Mark can help us with as well. So what I'm going to do first is to invite speakers who aren't members of the committee to speak, please, by raising their blue hands. And if you'd all like to do that now, and I've got, so it's non-members of the committee, please. If members can put hands down, that's good. So start off, please, with Councillor Paul Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to start by saying that it is the intention of the new administration and for councillors to work together with officers to coin a phrase that Councillor Wibley made up, to get seafront done. And I think there was a Brexit analogy made earlier, but there are similarities. And I think the plan from the previous administration was to market this site, or these sites, but the phase 3A site, but only to a hotel holiday accommodation operator. Now, I think that's a very narrow remit. And I think also that Hemingway had a very narrow remit as well. The issue with the public consultations that Mr. Child mentioned in his report, thus far is that they've not, to my mind, been meaningful. They have tended to offer fait accomplis. And last year at Ocean, the former leader of the council spoke of the option to the public of a hotel, or you get your council tax increase. Now this goes down like a pint of cold sick with the general public, and we need to change that conversation. And one thing I'd like to see is us to look at marketing this site and these sites, but having a wider remit. See, I'm not predetermined for or against the hotel, but I worry that there are some that are. And I think we need to market this site and look at the potential for example, you know, high quality outdoor operators, commercial operators of attractions to be invited to put forward their interest in these sites. Councillor Wibley did a poll on Facebook a few months ago in which he asked Exmouth people on the Exmouth community Facebook page whether they wanted to see a hotel on that site. And as Councillor Wibley will confirm if he speaks from within the committee, the answer was sadly a resounding no from the vast majority of local residents. And we need to listen to local residents with all of this. I mean, it's all we need to do something that's commercially viable, but at the same time, we can't go ahead and ignore the views of the residents. So that would be my message. And I thank Mr. Child for the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Miller, very much. Councillor Andrew Moulding, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. And thank you to Tim Child for a very good presentation, and to those speakers from local residents of Exmouth who also spoke very convincingly. I was involved very much at the start of this process, being the chairman of the Exmouth Programme Board, Regeneration Programme Board, prior to Councillor Phil Skinner taking over and now reaching this current stage. And I believe that what we have done to date, and that is to provide ready access to the seafront by redirecting the road and the car park, and also providing what I believe will be a huge success, and that is the Sideshore Water Sports Centre. So as you said in your presentation, Mr. Child, the provision of the Water Sports Centre and the road relocation has complied with our vision for the Exmouth seafront, and now we have to move forward with its further development. And the vision right at the very start of this process was to provide a project facility which was directed at the young and the not so young, was projected at those who wanted to be within that area, both in the winter and indeed, of course, in the summer, and to provide a facility which was an attraction to both visitors and indeed to local people in Exmouth. And that has been the vision all along. So now we come to the future. And the future is there to be determined and will involve the sites of the Harbour View Cafe and the former fun playground operated in the past. And my vision has always been that we should have a landmark building on the site of the Harbour View Cafe, which will provide a restaurant facilities of a very high quality, and of course incorporate the watch facility, as we heard from the speaker from that organisation. And I am sure that the site that the Harbour View Cafe sits on is such an important site for Exmouth that we can provide something really special on that particular location. As far as the area for development of the hotel is concerned, I have no strong views on that, and there were obviously always fors and againsts, and so those who were in favour of the hotel pointed out the benefit that bringing visitors to that hotel would bring to Exmouth. It could have facilities, as it was suggested previously, for a gym or a spa within that hotel. So that hotel accommodation would not necessarily just be for visitors, but could also be for locals. And of course, it does provide an opportunity for some form of capital development and capital receipt, whether that's in long-term process or a short-term benefit. And more importantly than everything, in my view, is the area for local people to enjoy in the centre of the site, which should be very much aimed at young people, but should also provide various alternative eating accommodation. We know that when people visit anywhere, one of the first things they seek is, what sort of food am I going to eat? Where can I get a drink? Where can I get some food, whether it's high quality food or whether it's more of the takeaway variety? And I think the site offers the opportunity for that. So, but it must be primarily aimed at young people with a range of facilities that they would enjoy, free for all, and with seating available for parents and grandparents and so on, to also sit and enjoy the views and enjoy that site. The site still has amazing potential. It complements Exmouth in a tremendous way. And although there were a number of people who objected to the relocation of the road and objected to the sideshore water sports centre, I believe that people in Exmouth now appreciate what the council has been trying to do as far as the water sports centre is concerned, and the opening up of the seafront. I am still very confident that this site will be a tremendous success. I personally am in favour of the Hemingway project, and I think that will lead us to a way forward. I also agree with Tim Child that we should start a marketing exercise to gauge the potential for the site. And as I say, I have tremendous support for the whole of this project and look forward to it being a landmark for Exmouth and to become a jewel in the throne of the East Devon accommodation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Moulding. I'm obviously very mindful of your own personal long involvement in this. It's reminded me of something. And Alethea and Chris, can we just take this for the minutes, please? Andrew mentioned capital receipts. The one thing we're missing in this meeting, and we need for the next one, is we need to see a spreadsheet that shows what we've spent in Exmouth on everything from roads to setting up activities to how we've been doing on temporary attractions and pop-up food places. Let's go back over, I don't know, 5 years, something like that, what we spent and what we've received. So in other words, what the true financial position is at the moment. And I think this will come up in debate earlier, but while I'm thinking of it, can we include the current position of the Ocean, the acquisition cost of that, the revenues received so far, and what those revenues are likely to be? So I just want to get that. So I'm saying that when I think of it, because otherwise it will go. I'm sure somebody else will raise that later. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that. Coming up to, it's interesting, somebody's got their hand up. Yeah, I'll go to Steve Gazzard next, and then Jeff Ewell. Steve, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I firstly say that I'm really pleased that these meetings are open to the public, and long may that continue. I'd just like to give some good news to start with regarding Exmouth. As many of you will know, the Imperial Hotel has reopened in Exmouth and at the moment has 84 guests in, and long may that continue. I'm one of those that is very fortunate that I can walk along the seafront every day because of my age and that I am retired. And I also have to put on record, I was one of those that objected to the change of the road to the water sports centre and to losing our wonderful swans that we had. Time shows sometimes that I get things wrong, and I have to admit I am impressed with what we have down there excuse me, at this moment in time. I spend a lot of my time talking to visitors and locals, especially in the play areas and the Queen's Drive open space. And yes, it's been very difficult this year because of COVID, but we have been fortunate and to have many visitors coming to Exmouth. And what I am concerned about is that it's taken a lot of us quite a long while to accept what we have there. And I wouldn't want what we have there now taken away again and go back to square one. I think the free play areas that we have, the free areas that we have where children can go in the open space, yes, it gets updated and cleaned every year. I think that is superb, and I would like to suggest that that is what the tourists are looking for. In my other role, I do talk to the businesses that are involved in there, and they are happy to be there. But as I said, it's been difficult times this year for them. But what they would like to see is, rather than having a rolling contract on a yearly basis, they would like to be given the opportunity to have a longer license or tenure there. Because at this present time, there's nothing there to make them want to invest or improve the facilities that they offer. So I do think there is a case to be argued for that these people that are down there operating should be given an extended contract to do so rather than one year at a time. But I do think that what we have there at this moment in time is very interesting, and it goes down with the local people. I'm not against change per se. All I would say is that if we are going to change the seafront, that we whatever we put down there has to blend in with the seafront that we have, because as we all know, and I'm very fortunate that I was born and bred here, that the seafront is the jewel in our crown, and if we do anything that is going to take away that, I think that will be to the adverse of the number of people that are coming to Exmouth. And I finally, Chair, I really do believe that because of the COVID situation that we are in, and if we do not have conditions imposed on us with people travelling, I think Exmouth this year and into early next year will have even more visitors down here during the winter. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Steve, for that invaluable contribution. I think you're still the mayor. Are you in Exmouth? Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay, so there we go. That's from somebody born there and currently the mayor. Very important contribution. Thank you. And I think that sentiment is echoed by us all, which is summed up, isn't it, by that old cliche, we are where we are. So there's a lot of stuff that's happened there that's really very promising, and we need to build on that whilst trying to work out how we got there as well. Right, thank you very much. So I've now got Councillor Jeff Young and then Councillor Eileen Wragg, please, from outside the committee. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tim, and the speakers so far. Like Steve, I'm retired, and like Steve, I enjoy walking along the seafront. I also cycle down on my electric bike down to Exmouth quite often when I get some time. and it is my local beach, and it is also the beach that my grandchildren enjoy a lot of their time on. And now it's very important, the rest of East Devon, that we get this right. Tim gave us a good rundown on where we are at the moment. One thing that he didn't mention was the full planning permission for the hotel and the rest of the area that was approved in 2017. It's now run out. So unfortunately, all the money we spent on doing the plans for the hotel and everything else has now been wasted. And thank you, Paul, for bringing up the suggestion of looking at the costs. I would very much like to know how much the road has cost and how much capital return we need to recover that cost, which was the original agreement with paying for the road. I was very interested with Coast Watch. I've been and visited them recently, and they are very push for space. And whatever we do, we must have the Coast Watch facility continue, and providing possibly more facilities with viewing and training might be a benefit for us all. Summing up, we are where we are. I don't want to look back. I want to look forward to an exciting Exmouth. In the last 15 years, I've been in around this area. We've seen a lot of improvements to Exmouth. Now, let's see if we can accelerate things now and improve Exmouth even more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young, Jeff, very much. Councillor Eileen Ragg, please.
Sorry, I couldn't see my screen.
Yep, you're good.
There's one important thing that that Steve picked up on there, Councillor Gazzard. The subject of leases on the seafront. The reason that the seafront looks so tired and dated was because tenants down there had 7-year renewable leases. Now, they're not going to invest any capital in something which might come to an end in 7 years' time. So although the leases were renewable, and we know that one family had been there for about 40 years, that was by no means set in stone. The other thing, yes, holiday trends are fast changing, not least because of COVID. We've had a wonderful summer. That's taken the edge off COVID a bit down here for us. So I think, you know, to focus perhaps more on staycations, and also because of environmental concerns, growing environmental concerns about air travel, although we know, you know, there are electrically powered planes now that are being tested or flying. Even so, people are actually getting used to what's around them and beginning to appreciate even more this absolutely marvelous environment. And I'm continually amazed by it. I've lived in Exmouth. I was born here, lived here all my life, but constantly, you know, wondering at the beauty of the place. We've got it all. We've got the Commons on one side. Again, that's worth promoting, the Pebblebed Heaths. We've got the ex-estuary, and Deary and Stewart, who sadly died less than 2 weeks ago, who ran Stewart Line cruises. He brought immense amounts of people to the town, and promoted the economy tirelessly, and I'd like to pay tribute to him because I think he's definitely well worth a mention, he and his family. I think what we find mildly irritating local people is people from outside coming here and saying, oh, well, if this isn't going to change, I'm going back. And our reaction to that is sort of two fingers up. Well, go on back then. But there again, they can bring a fresh look to things, as Tim said earlier, to see things through fresh eyes. So I think we have to be very, very careful about planning long term for the future of the seafront. And whatever is built there will be there for a very long time. I've seen a lot of changes to the beach. When I was growing up here, the sea would come over the wall at Orcombe Point. People would be fishing off there. Now the sea doesn't come anywhere up towards the wall. The sand dunes have gone. They're out in the middle somewhere. We had Sir James Bevan down a few years ago, and I walked along the seafront with him, and I said, and that's where the dunes were. What? He said, you had sand dunes? I said, we've still got them, but they're out there. We've seen the changes at Dawlish Warren, the £15 million that was thrown at Dawlish Warren for to stop the Warren being washed away, and we've seen that's failed in a very short space of time. So it's easy to do things with other people's money, but what we've got to think of is this is public money that we're dealing with here. And I continually questioned the cost of the road, as Councillor Young has referred to. How was it paid for? We were told that 1/3 or one part of it would be coming from the local enterprise partnership, one part from Devon County Council. Head of Highways assured me at the time, because I was a county councillor, there would be no money. They had no money towards a road that was going nowhere. And that those sums would be matched by the Coastal Communities Committee. Well, if there's nothing to match it to, there's no money there. So who paid for the road? We were told it was going to cost £3 million. I was told, along with Councillor Brenda Taylor in February this year, that the cost was actually 600,000, but with added on costs, it was 1.5 million. So I don't believe that we know the truth. Not yet, but as you know, tired old phrase, we are where we are. But we have to move forward very sensitively. We have to listen to the public, not from people in landlocked areas of other parts of East Devon telling us what we should be having here. It's up to local people and our visitors to tell us what they want. And it has to be affordable, because we have to bear in mind as well, we're in the income for, especially for younger people down here, is at living wage rate, basic rate. And they just don't have the money. They'll never own their own homes for a start. So we have to factor in all these considerations. You can tell I'm quite passionate about the town, always have been. But, you know, we've got to build on what we've got now. We've made a start on the seafront. We've got to move forward. We've got to be positive about it. We've got to give this town of ours what it really deserves, not to become overly commercial, but to blend it in with our natural surroundings. So we've got a lot going for us here, a hell of a lot, not least the sea and what the activities that take place on the sea. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Eileen. I think that's all the members from outside of the committee. I'm going to come in. Oh no, very sorry, Kevin Blakey. Kevin Blakey, please, in your own time, please, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair, and a bit of a late entry there. So I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that Councillor Ragg has just said. The whole question of what is provided here has to be ultimately paid for. No matter what it is, And as you will know, or most of the people attending this meeting will know, that I was involved with this last year. The point of the exercise then, and I think should be now, that whatever is provided should be affordable, which is to say cost neutral. Otherwise, there's going to be a significant financial burden that's going to fall on the taxpayers, and whether that is East Devon District Council taxpayers, or if it is indeed even just Exmouth Council taxpayers, that if costs exceed income, those losses would have to be met. So, in my view, I would urge that whatever we decide to go for should have that commercial edge and should be expected to pay its way. But coming back to a couple of things that Councillor Ragg said, she mentioned that it is not for landlocked members to have a comment on this. Now, does that mean that out of 60 members on the district council, that anybody that does not have a marine boundary in their ward is not entitled to speak because or to hold an opinion? Because that seems to me to be a very odd way of going about EDDC business. And the other point was that the visitors get to tell us what they want. Well, naturally, visitors' opinions should be taken into account, but let's not forget that apart from perhaps entry fees or however it might be done, the visitors themselves won't be funding this, won't be bearing the responsibility for it beyond their stay for a few days, a few weeks, whatever it may be. So yes, take the visitor's view into account by all means, but let's not be driven entirely by what the visitors' opinions are. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. And I think with what Andrew, Councillor Moulding, said as well, I think that absolutely goes to the point when you're talking about cost neutral. I want to know, as chair of this Queen's Drive committee for the present, I want to know what the costs are. And I will get those. So if officers can make a note of those, I want to know what we've spent so far on everything to do with this. And I want the projections about what we're about to spend. And we need that. Because I think in that, it'll settle a lot of other issues. And I think, Kevin, I'm sure when Eileen said about landlocked members, that was probably born from a frustration from the past, where you did have members from outside Exmouth, a long way from Exmouth actually, leading it. And one of the problems we've had with this all along, in the period in which I've been watching it, which is about a decade now really, is until today really, you've had something that's led by a very small number of officers with very powerful delegated powers, including spending powers, actually, if we look at things like the purchase of the ocean, and a very small number of councillors, and with the public lacking the opportunity for a regular input. So anyway, hopefully all of that is now in the past and we can move on. Right, thank you so much for everybody's contribution there, members of the public and members alike. And so now if I can bring this into the committee itself and ask for blue hands for anybody from within the committee who would like to respond to Tim's report or what you've just heard or whatever. Can I just make a comment? This could go on for hours, and I don't mind if it does, if there's a lot that people want to say, but I don't think we should go beyond 3. And in that case, I would plan a comfort break, as it's called, in half an hour at noon for anybody who's already feeling the pressure. I'm not, of course, only 58. So, right, we've got Councillor Joe Wibley first. How are you doing, Joe? Are you there?
Hello. I've done it again. I'm normally quite good at the unmuting thing, but not today. I'll keep it brief, despite that little problem there. Right. I come at this as somebody who's watched from the outside until the last election. it's such a complex issue. I think, first of all, I'd like to say, Chair, I welcome the fact that you have recognised there are two parts to this. There is what's happened in the past and there's what's happened in the future. And I think after a few meetings, the focus really, really needs to be on what we do going forward. Councillor Miller mentioned me and a Facebook poll earlier on. I would not want to put too great an importance on something like that. But what it does show is that in terms of, I've heard the phrase visioning works many times this morning. It seems to me it's quite simple. And some of the questions that are posed by Tim's report have been, could be answered very, very simply. And I think going forward, what we need to do is to look to answer those questions by involving the public in as simple a way as we can, and look to do something, because I think the most important thing, and everybody in Exmouth just wants something done, and they want something which fits with how with them moving their town into a place where everybody is happy. The commercial aspect of it, I think, is important. But if we don't put anything spectacular there, if we do something that fits with the environment but isn't too ambitious but is ambitious enough, it won't cost a huge amount. So we don't need to be looking to pay to raise millions of pounds. But I think, in short, what I would say is we need to do something, and hopefully after the first few meetings of this, where we can go over what's happened and find out exactly where we are, and as you say, get the true financial position, we can move forward. That's my thoughts at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Joe. Next to speak, please, is Councillor Nick Hookway. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Firstly, thanks to Tim Chard for his report. I agree with him at one of his final slides, where he said we're now at the crucial part of the jigsaw for the development of Queen's Drive. I absolutely think that is right. It is crucial now that we get this right. And I'm going to just take a few moments just to lead you through my thinking about this. I was born and raised in Exmouth and spent a huge amount of time on that beach as a small boy, because the family had a beach hut and we used the beach on a regular basis. I then moved away. I went up north and studied my degree in Liverpool in geomorphology, which then led to a career in teaching. I also, due to the fact of my late wife being a French teacher, spent a lot of time in France, and we visited many of the beaches on the west coast of France. And I came to the conclusion over many years that Exmouth Beach and the seafront was one of the finest seafronts in the whole of Western Europe. Right, that's quite some claim, but I'm quite prepared to stick by that. We have in Exmouth what is a very good example of what is known as natural capital. That is an area of nature that has a definable value. We are unbelievably lucky in that our seafront sits between the ex-estuary, which is an estuary of global importance and globally recognised because of its wildlife. And we then have the Jurassic Coast to the east. What an amazing environment. And my concern has always been, and my reason why I got involved with Save Exmouth Seafront and campaigned about developments, is that I felt that the developments that were proposed and some which have been built have not exploited the natural capital, have not taken advantage, perhaps exploited is the wrong word, have not taken advantage of the natural capital that we have on Exmouth Seafront. Now, Tim Chard mentioned Wayne Hemingway. Now, it's very interesting when I listen to people talk about Hemingway's survey. When I talked to Wayne Hemingway, when I listened to Wayne Hemingway, I got a very different view of his opinions about the seafront. I distinctly remember him saying that the seafront is pretty good as it is. And that's quite a telling comment, I think. And I have always maintained that if Wayne Hemingway was brought in much earlier on, then we may not be in the position that we are now, but we are where we are. Okay. Wayne Hemingway was very interesting in his comments about Exmouth. He was very complimentary. He was very complimentary, for example, about the Imperial Hotel site, and I have no surprise at all that that site has changed hands within 3 months. I think that's a very telling episode if we're trying to develop and think about putting a hotel or another hotel on the seafront. No, the Imperial Hotel is the place to be. So I think we need to listen to residents, we need to move forward, and I think we really do need to think about providing a universal attraction by which I mean that it appeals to as many people as possible, that we are catering for those people who perhaps are not fortunate enough to be able to take part in water sports. I've nothing against water sports, by the way. I took part in them myself in the past, but you need to have something for those people who are perhaps less fortunate than us. We need to think about what we can do on a site that is very difficult, very challenging to develop because of its layout, because its closeness to the road. And we need, I think, something that is going to appeal to as many residents as possible and as many visitors. We do have a great many visitors visiting Exmouth on a regular basis, particularly at the weekends. And I have on many occasions just stood by the Harbour View Cafe and watched people just walk straight past. I note what Tim Charles said about the open space. It's as good as far as it goes, but for many people, it doesn't go far enough. It only takes up 1/3 of the former fun park site, and it only caters for mainly for the under sevens. There isn't anything else, for example, for teenagers. And I think perhaps we need to think about that. Right, okay. Also, coming back to what Councillor Blakey was saying, I think it's very interesting to say, yes, we have to have developments that pay for themselves. But there is a situation at which I'm very grateful from Simon Davey providing me some information. I asked him recently how much rent and income had been lost from the businesses that were closed to make way for this development. And he informed me that up to the 31st of December 2019, a sum of £178,361 and a few pence had been lost, and that relates to rent and rates. And I really think that there has been a real lack of really solid project management, something I've referred to in the past before I was elected. It seems that we've gone about this in a very, very odd way. I think it's also, I agree with Councillor Young about a planning application that has now lapsed, and that's a tremendous waste of time and effort on behalf of officers and money for the area and the council. So we need to move forward, we need to listen to what residents want, and we need to provide something that complements the natural capital of the seafront. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nick. All of that heard goes to the point I think I've made twice now about needing to understand the finances. Now, I need to say something here to make sure that our own officers are comfortable in this meeting and moving forward. It is clear to me that, and they have made it explicit with me in writing, that those officers felt that they were executing plans that were devised and voted for by the previous council prior to 2019. So I'm just putting that out there. We need to be respectful at all times of our officers. The decisions that may have been made were effectively politically driven from the top, and I think that's quite important to note that. Right, thank you, Nick, for that very much. Councillor Ollie Davey, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a list here of various points, so this may be a little bit bitty, but I'll try and sort of pull it together as much as I can. We've heard the phrase appropriate development, and I think that is what is needed there. We have an opportunity here. We've got a kind of blank slate. If we get it right, it could be absolutely fantastic. And if we get it wrong, it'll be an absolute mess. So the devil, of course, is in the detail of what is actually appropriate and who decides what is appropriate. But to my mind, a hotel is not one of them. And I think it's been pointed out by several people that the hotel idea was the least popular with residents. And I think Councillor Blakey's made the point that we shouldn't necessarily be driven by what tourists say or visitors say when they come to the town. On the other hand, we want to attract visitors to the town. So we've got to have something there to attract them. But I'm not convinced that a hotel on that site anyway is the way to go. I think there could be other alternative sites for a hotel. It doesn't have to be right on the seafront. Much has been made of the consultations that have taken place, and Tim gave us a long list of various consultations. Consultation can be many things, and I've sat in consultations that were not consultations. They were, this is what you get, and the only choice you have is whether you're shot or hanged. And I think that's, I think we need to take some of this consultation with a pinch of salt. I agree, looking forward, that what we need is something that is commercially viable, and it needs to generate income for the council. Councillor Blakey is absolutely right. We can't be throwing money at the seafront. It's got to be something that is going to be self-financing. But at the same time, I don't think we should necessarily be trying to pay off historic debt. If you want to consider that debt as part of the overall development, then by all means try and recoup it. But I don't think that we should be trying to do that in the short term by putting highly commercial things on there. My heart sinks every time I see car park. We have loads of car parking down there, and yes, in the summer it may not be enough, so we've got to find other ways. I'm a green councillor, and much as I love the motor car, I don't want to see huge numbers of cars pouring onto the seafront. We have got to find other ways of getting people to the seafront. You just have to be at the station on a nice sunny day to see people pouring off the train, and what we really need is a good link to get them down to the seafront and encourage more people to come to Exmouth in sustainable ways and not to be covering the seafront in car parks. We need some parking down there, I get that, but not more and more of them. So we need to market the site for all kinds of commercial uses, not just for a hotel. We need attractions undercover. We need attractions for the young. We've had everybody's done a bit of biography today, so here's mine. My dad was a potter, and we had a little pottery in the wilds of Scotland, actually. And the number of visitors we got went up hugely when it rained. So what you've got to have is attractions that people can do when that lovely natural capital, as Councillor Hookway so aptly put it, is not available to people. They don't want to sit on the beach when it's pouring with rain. So when the beach suddenly empties, they can have somewhere to go. And the closer that is, the better. So there should be some undercover attractions along there. And I think that's got to be part of the mix. And people have made points about attracting younger people. Absolutely. There's nothing much for teenagers down there. Although, funnily enough, when I was a teacher, another bit of biography, one of the things the kids all wanted was a bowling alley. Because there was one in Exeter and they loved going there. We have a bowling alley now. Are they going there? I don't know, but I've got a horrible feeling that the time has gone, because the kind of those kind of fads move on, don't they? And I don't know what they do now, but perhaps it's skateboarding. I don't know. The one in the Fear Park is very well used, I must say. So the what is there at the moment, the existing Queen's Drive space is absolutely fantastic. And the minute I saw it, I thought, for goodness sake, Exmouth, you know, this is what we need. And East Devon District Council have actually got something right for once. And I was interested in how that had been developed. And actually, it seems to have been through officers coming up with ideas. Either that or they're taking credit for it, but it is a fantastic space, and we need to build on what we've got there. I don't mean build over it, just to be clear. Build on the attraction we've got there. Think what it is that makes that so attractive to people, and think, how can we extend that? But at the same time, it costs us money to operate that and to maintain it, and therefore we need something else to compensate for that. Much has been made of the Hemingway report, but I have a feeling that Hemingway, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Hemingway was given a plan with a hotel on it. So the option of a hotel was predetermined. I don't think Wayne Hemingway was the one who came up with the hotel, but I may be wrong there, and I'm prepared to be corrected on that. Finally, we had an interesting presentation from Coast Watch, and I'm very aware of their excellent work. Who pays for their premises? I'm a bit unclear about who is paying for their premises at the moment, and on what terms they're there. And I suppose, to be slightly provocative, my question is, why should East Devon District Council build it, or somebody else? But I'll wait more information on that one. I think that's enough from me for now.
Okay, thanks, Ollie. I'll obviously throw back to Tim and to Mark at some point after we've heard more from members. I'm just noting a couple of direct questions there, aren't we? There's the issue about the Coast Watch, and there's also the question, was Wayne Hemingway's project working to a spec that included, in a sort of predetermined way, the idea of a hotel? That would be helpful to know in a bit. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Well, thanks, Paul, Chair. I've got quite a few things to say as well, but I'll try not to be too long. Thank you to Tim for the report. And in some ways, I've got some sympathy for him, because he's sort of come into this at a late stage and doesn't understand what's gone on in the past. And I do understand that we want to move forward. But there are some things in this report which, I mean, there are quite a lot of things in there that are just not quite accurate, really, not to put too fine a point on it. And so we have to, I think some of those, I would like to think that we could have some of those issues rectified before we go any further forward, if that's possible. I mean, I don't want to go through them all now, and I'm sure we've all got different ideas as to what is not quite accurate, because if we're going to move on, we have to be moving on with accurate and evidenced information. So that's one thing about the report. And one of the things he mentioned, and other people have mentioned it, about the various surveys that have been done. And he mentioned in his list the one that I did in 2015. It was just a few months after I'd been elected, actually. And it was a very, very simple survey. Just asked what people liked about the seafront, what they didn't like, and what they would like to see. About 6 questions, basically, very open questions. They weren't biased, they were just very open. I've still got the report. The report that came out was sent to all the councillors, and nothing at all was done with it. The person who had put the report together with me wanted to present it at a district council meeting, and we were refused. So I'm just anxious that, we talk about questionnaires and surveys and consultation, that this one that was done, it was done online, that I did, it was done online, it was done on paper. We had return boxes in lots of shops all over the town so that people could return paper copies. It was very accessible, and it went on for about 6 or 7 weeks, I think, from memory. And we got the results back, as I say, and did this report. The upshot of it all was, and I'm sorry I haven't got a copy in front of me, but the upshot was that what people wanted then, bearing in mind that all the previous businesses were there, were that they just wanted to, they liked what was there, they liked what was being offered there, but they just wanted everything to be upgraded a bit. It was quite simple, really. And I was thinking, because I was naive at the time, I was a new councillor, and I thought, oh, that sounds quite easy. Sounds quite straightforward, and surely we can take this to the council and they'll say, yeah, well, that's fine, because I know some of the businesses had spent a lot of their own money in trying to get plans done to refurbish their own premises and to upgrade everything at their own expense. So that could have been done quite easily with little fuss, instead of which we started on this great long charade of a totally incompetent, and I have to say this now, a totally incompetent project, which was ill thought out right from the beginning. There was no proper consultation with the community. As I say, my survey was completely ignored because it didn't fit, obviously, with what the council wanted at the time. They wanted a developer in, and the idea was, as I think Councillor Ragg and others have mentioned, that the developer would pay for the road and the car park, and that all fell flat because the developer went bust and wasn't fit for purpose. There's a great long history to all this. So what concerns me is it seems as if there's an irony, really, that we're almost going around in circles, because I know Councillor Gazzard said about the businesses would like to have a longer lease, and Councillor Ragg referred to this, I think, as well. That's all the businesses wanted at the time. They were on 7-year leases, which just weren't long enough to be able to invest and do what they really wanted to. They wanted longer leases. That could have been sorted out. This problem need not have been a problem at all. The site did not want regenerating. It wasn't a site for regeneration. It was already okay and just needed some updating. And that's what the public wanted. Public, residents and visitors were part of my survey. So what Councillor Gazzard is talking about is the current businesses down there would like to have a longer lease. Well, that's absolutely ironic, because that's what was wanted several years ago by the previous businesses. Added to which, of course, the idea of that Councillor Hookway said, how much we've lost in income, nearly 200,000 quid, probably a lot more now, from the businesses who could still have been there. They could all still have been there, paying their way, paying income into the council, instead of which we as a council have paid who knows what until we get the proper figures from finance. I've got an idea of what they are, but we've poured loads of money into this project, which has basically got nowhere so far. We're getting a water sports centre. Yes, so what? Right, we've got that. We haven't got anything else for the phase 3 site. Sorry, I'm just banging on a bit. Let me just get to my notes. I better try and sort myself here a minute. So it's just that. I think I agree with a lot of what's been said already, you know, that the public have to be involved. This is what has been requested for years. The public have been ignored, and that's got to stop. You know, the public have to be involved in this. It has to be, as other people have said, there've got to be facilities down there for people who have little money. And, you know, who may have big families. Sorry, they're on benefits.
Do you want a moment, Megan? You're right there.
Yeah, sorry, and just can't afford some of the things that maybe people may want to put on offer down there. So we've got to think of everybody, visitors and residents. I'm sorry about that. It just got a bit much for me. But if anybody's interested in seeing the report, the survey that I did in 2015, I know it's 5 years old now, but you know, I'm more than happy for people to see that so that you can see what people wanted then. And obviously the scenario has changed. Most of those businesses, 4 businesses have been closed and they're not there. But I think it might be useful information for people if you're interested in seeing it. I'll leave it at that for now. Sorry, Chair, I went on a bit long there.
That's all right, Megan, and thank you. And I can understand the emotion that you feel there. I know you felt embattled by this for many, many years. Yes, please, I'd love to see that report. I'm just going to reiterate, I'm sorry, I'm going to get very boring about this. Please, all public speakers, members inside and outside of this cabinet, it's going to be this committee. It's going to be hard for officers to capture everything you've said today. These are going to be the minutes of a lifetime. So if there's something you would wish this committee to consider in future, please email it to me. Not for any other reason, but you might as well email it to me because I'm chairing these meetings. So that's pr@eastevon.gov.uk. Thank you very much indeed, Megan, for that. I've got one blue hand remaining. And 1 minute until we're due for a break. But let's have the blue hand first for all of you bursting, and then we can go and have a little think. Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. My notes that I've been jotting down might take more than a minute. So with your agreement, perhaps if we could have the comfort break and then I'll continue on.
Okay, very welcome to. I hope that's okay with everybody. So then officers, I think we do this by just simply pausing it on air for 5 minutes, don't we? Is that right, Alethea and Chris?
Yes, that's correct. So if you could all reconvene at 12:05, that would be fantastic.
Lovely.
And leave
Thank you very
yourselves
much.
on mute in the meantime.
Thank you, Alethea.
Know that if we work together, we can defeat this. The new rules will also apply in
Chairman, are you ready to recommence?
I'm ready when you are, Alethea. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to go.
Thank you. Okay, I hope everybody is back in. I see a few people still taking their seats, and I don't blame them for a moment, so take the time. Right, hope you're all sitting comfortably, then we'll begin. If you remember 5 minutes ago, we had Councillor Paul Hayward coming to speak. Paul, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be as brief as I possibly can, but obviously this falls partly under my portfolio, mostly under my portfolio, so I've been making notes and listening to speakers. I come into this as one of those sort of landlocked landlubbers inland in Axminster, and I only moved to Devon in 2007. And really, I had no cause to come to Exmouth. When you live in Axminster, you've got Seaton and you've got Charmouth and you've got Lyme Regis. If you want to go to a big shop, you go to Exeter. And so Exmouth sort of passes you by. You know it's there, but you've got no reason to go because you've got other amenities close by. But that's not to say it should be disregarded. It's just not on everyone's radar. So I'm looking at this from an objective outside view, but I am completely behind the sentiments raised that this is relevant to the biggest town in East Devon. 35,000 plus residents and numerous tens of thousands of visitors. So it's critically important to our economy, to our reputation, to our standing in the UK. And so we need to do the right thing. There's been a lot of proverbs and sayings, and I'm a great one for a saying, so I'm going to throw a couple in myself in response. So I have read that politicians are people who, when they see the light at the end of the tunnel, they just go out and buy more tunnel. And I'm mindful that things need to be done. It's dragged on. Now, this administration, the one that currently controls the council, we came into being early this year. So we've come into this at a late stage. So we're suffering from what can only be called, it's an artificial deadline. We are being given a target to work to. And the one thing, the incontrovertible fact I've discovered working in the private sector all my life is that if you have an artificial deadline to work to, you will make poor decisions. You will be forced into a decision that will come back to bite you. Act in haste, repent in leisure. So therefore, I think one of the things we need to consider, and I take everything on board that's been said. Yes, the past is important, and no one more than I wants to see all these financials laid out in front of me. Everything exposed to the public gaze, unless it is truly confidential, and then in front of every councillor, not just a select few. So we can look and read for ourselves. I want to know who all the players are, who have been involved. That we know about Grenadier, we know about LED Leisure, but I know very little about Marai Capital. I want to know what part they've played in all this, everyone who's been involved. I want to see the papers, I want to see the files, I want to see full disclosure before I make any decisions going forward. Because until I see that, there's things I don't know, and I need to know about them. But yeah, so in terms of artificial deadlines, it may well be, and we've heard about the planning consents, that we do need to extend them just for a short while to give us a bit more time. And I know that seems kicking it down the road, but I'd rather kick it down the road and make a right decision than make a poor decision now. Coming back to something Justin said earlier about Greek proverbs, planting trees that you'll never get to sit under. That's fine if we're just planting trees. I love planting trees. I'd plant trees everywhere. But when you're building buildings, that saying really doesn't hold much weight. There are seaside towns close to here that are bearing the scars of 70s planning. The people who built those things are long gone. They banked their money, they've retired off to the Costa del wherever, but the towns themselves are suffering the consequences. I often get told, and I'm accused of being anti-enterprise, anti-developer, anti-commerce. Well, that's nonsense. I've worked in the private sector all my life. Public sector is fairly new to me. We need to work together, but it's a two-way street. They get something, we get something. When I say we, East Devon residents, not councillors, East Devon residents get something. It's a balance, it's a compromise. And as a council, we have been hoodwinked over the years in several areas. And I'm not going to name them, but they've come across my desk where the council, the residents have come off very poorly, but private commercial enterprises seem to have done very well. And that's not going to happen on my watch. I'm more than happy to talk to developers, talk to commercial enterprises, but only if the people of East Devon get something back that's going to work for all. I have no problem with marketing the site. You know, the more we know, the better decision making we make. You know, but if it's a leading question, if you put to a marketeer, develop it for this, you'll get those answers. So, you know, you need to widen that net slightly. I am skeptical of consultations, which are, as was quoted earlier, fait accomplis. And the public are skeptical. The public aren't fools. We've only got to see things such as boatface. If you take the mick out of the public and treat them like idiots, you will get idiotic answers back. And they don't like it. So let's be open. Let's have consultations that are truly inclusive, that don't ask leading questions. And I myself, living in Exmouth, have heard many leading questions in consultations that really don't, you know the answer you're going to get before they come in. The final point is, and this is the elephant in the room, but we can't get away from it. We're in the middle of a global pandemic still, and it's getting worse. Once that's passed, we've got the hurdle of Brexit, and whatever any one position in this room is, it's going to have a profound impact on Exmouth, on East Devon, on the UK. So we need to bear that in mind. And if we need to park a final binding decision that will mark Exmouth for the next 50 years, long after I've gone, after everyone else in this room is shuffled off this mortal coil, then we park it until we see the outturn of what Brexit is going to give, because that's the only way to do it. And as I came out earlier, and I'll summarise now, Chair, is we are a new administration. We've been called inexperienced. Well, every administration is inexperienced when they start. We're not all time-served politicians, thank God, because the world could do with less of those, in my honest opinion, perhaps a limit on how long we can serve. But actually doing these things by Zoom, it's safe, it binds us together. But there is there's no better way of doing these things than actually sitting in a room. And when I was in business, if I wanted a decision made, I would lock everyone in a room with pizza and coffee, with all the evidence and the information we needed, and we wouldn't leave until a decision had been reached. We wouldn't just think, oh, it's close enough, you know, it's time for a cup of tea. We'd stay until everyone had had their say. You'd heard the arguments, the counter arguments, and you came up with a consensus view. And I think that is going to be necessary. It's not possible now, but it is going to be ultimately possible, because looking at plans on a computer, looking at financial outturns, it doesn't give you the full picture. Context and a face-to-face approach is important, but it might well be we can never meet face-to-face. We'll have to adapt. But I hope I haven't gone on too long. I'm as passionate about this as I can be. From my role as a portfolio holder, as an East Devon resident, I have now been to Exmouth many, many times. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. And I agree with everything that's been said. The potential is incredible, but the potential to do harm and to balls it up, sorry, my apologies, that's a terrible expression, to foul it up is equally high. And I think we need to look at this, consider our options. Don't be tied down by artificial deadlines and think, well, oh God, we've only got 2 weeks. We've only got 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 months. No, we can extend. And if it's prudent to do so, we should do so and justify that, because we're going to make the right decision ultimately. We're not kicking anything down the road. We're just being sensible, and we're doing it for the people of East Devon, the people of Exmouth, and all of our visitors. No councillor here is going to benefit financially. And if they did, then they shouldn't be a councillor. Become a developer instead. That's my view. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone participating, for listening to me going on. I'll continue now. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, very much. So I can see a hand from Councillor Aurora Bailey from Exmouth Town Council. So just to, because these meetings and these formats will be new to quite a lot of people, the convention is usually what happens is that people from outside the committee itself get an opportunity to speak, and then it comes within the committee. But this obviously should be flexibility for that. So very happy. Aurora, please do speak.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Actually, I am on the committee of the delivery group. I'm
terribly sorry. Of course you
Town
are.
Council,
Of course
actually.
My
I
huge
am on your
apologies.
committee.
You are.
What I'd like to say is I've listened to everybody and I agree with some of it. I don't agree with some of it. My idea at the moment is, because we have not decided on anything in particular at the moment, I myself think a good idea, just so that the public sees that we are trying to move on with the Queen's Drive, is where the dinosaur park, I call it the dinosaur park because of the dinosaur. Originally, we were going to think about extending the dinosaur park into the little temporary car park that you're using at the moment, because it was recreation and leisure, to extend the park, because we could most probably do that with the lockdown, so that we could get the older children and more people using that area, because it's most popular. I go down there every weekend. I've lived in Exmouth most of my life. I'm a Devon person, and I feel I understand what everybody's putting to this, and I agree with a lot of it, but we need to do just something there at the moment, because everybody is thinking we're sitting on it and not doing anything. I think if we just extend the park, and so that the teenagers can use it as well, or older children, we would be seen to be starting it. And then we have time to think of all the ideas that everybody's got. And perhaps as a committee, we can move forward with it, but just start something at the moment. And I think with the COVID, we could most probably extend the park. And it's just my idea, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Aurora. I have to confess to a slight confusion. I'm trying to open a document here that's opening very slowly indeed, because I don't think we included you in the roll call, did we, at the beginning of the meeting? Is that correct? So
that is correct, yes.
Yes, so that's why I hadn't seen you listed there. So I apologise for that. We'll get that looked at and rectify for next time.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank
you,
Chair.
good. And shove your hand up again. Right, lovely, thank you. So let us now come to Nick Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted to just talk about Harbour View. Firstly, in terms of Coastwatch, I was very interested to hear what Ivor Jones was saying, particularly that they need facilities for training and so on. And I think that we should, as a council, do all that we can to help and support them. And I think that's something that we need to look at for the future. Secondly, I just want to refer back to Councillor Moulding's comments, where he said that he would be interested in a landmark building at Harbour View. And I think that really sums up the difference that exists between certain council members and residents, because Harbour View is one of the very few historic buildings in Exmouth. Exmouth has undergone huge redevelopment over many decades, and in some ways has changed out of all recognition. But Harbour View has been a constant. It does have a fantastic site. It is built of traditional materials. It has a very interesting history, which I won't bother with now. But it is a building that I believe, and many other residents believe, should stay. Now, what we do with the Coastwatch Tower, which is probably not now suitable, is something we need to look into. We need to think about some form of replacement. And I would be very interested to know if in the past officers have been asked to see if there are any ways in which they could extend or develop another tower, perhaps through national lottery funding. There never seems to be any mention of looking at other forms of funding apart from the commercial route. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nick, very much for that. Councillor Joe Wibley, please.
Hi there. Yeah, after my initial speech, when I had a bit of a brain fade, I'd like to come back. Just part of the reason that happened is because it's becoming clear to me this is such a huge issue with so many facets. It's just really, really difficult to try and say something about. I have 8 things that I want to say, and they're all trying to come out at once. It's such a confusing issue. One thing that did strike me, listening to Councillor Armstrong, Megan, and her impassioned speech about making this affordable. So yeah, we'll probably come to this later, but I'd like to propose that any proposals going forward must have an element of free or affordable provision built in, absolutely set in stone. Because that way, when we look back in a few years, in the way that Councillor Moulding had the opportunity to earlier, we can't airbrush over the facts and repaint images to alter people's perception of what happened and what went on. So if we say this is what we aim to achieve and we achieve it, we can point to it and say this is what we did. We can't then turn around and go, I've always been in favour of this, when quite clearly that hasn't been the case in the past. You can't turn around and say, I wanted this, when you never said that before. So that is my point. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Joe, indeed. I just wonder if during the last hour or so, whether Tim or Mark, obviously not subjective viewpoints, but whether there are any matters of fact that either of you would like to clear up or clarify from any notes you might have made.
So, Chair, I'm happy to come back on some factual points if that would be useful before we go any further.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Only if you've got them noted. I mean, it's been a hell of a meeting to keep track of. So if you've got some, that would be kind. Thank you, Tim. Okay.
So I'm picking up here on the main themes that have been discussed. So it's been discussed a couple of times. Why a hotel? So the Hemingway design work was not predetermined to look at a hotel. The report itself refers to the broad brief. What the Hemingway design work did was that it looked at it took into account the existing planning consent, which we'll come back to in a second, because that was another question, and deliverability, and the view that a hotel offered something to added something to the site itself in terms of the mix of uses, but also the seafront and also the town. So it wasn't predetermined. I'm going to jump around a little bit in terms of the questions, because I think that takes me on to naturally the next question, which is around planning. And we believe that we have implemented the 2012 permission by doing the road and the car park. So therefore, there's a consent that we believe we have implemented, which is clearly, it sits there in the background. So therefore, from a Hemingway design perspective, you would take that into account. And likewise, in terms of future operators expressing an interest in the site, clearly there's already a planning consent there. So again, so taking everything into account, but it wasn't predetermined. The next big area, I suppose, that we've talked about, and Councillor Arnott, we've picked up on your request for the detail at a future at the next meeting. In fact, having said that, let's give you a summary of the information now, because it seems to be quite a sort of a topical area. So questions have been asked about how much the road and car park cost. So the road and car park cost circa £1.6 million, plus costs basically, so all the consultancy advisors. In terms of the total costs to date, and I believe these are to date from the beginning, we are at a figure of around the £3 million mark. We will provide obviously the details around how those figures are comprised at the next meeting. But it was being discussed. I just wanted to come back with some sort of immediate answers there. Sticking on the subject of financials, I think it was Councillor Hookway asked about. Sorry, I didn't ask. He commented on the size of, or the quantum of the rent and income that the council's lost as a result of businesses having closed and left. And yes, it's a large figure, but that's very much the need. It demonstrates the need that we do need to move. We need to move this forward in the right way, but we do need to move this forward for everyone's benefit. There was a statement made by Councillor Hookway around perhaps not capitalising on the sort of natural capital of Exmouth and the seafront. Well, of course, we've got a classic example there of the Water Sports Centre, capitalising on the water, the wind, etc. So we absolutely are. And I suppose on that subject, and this is sort of a bit of a theme actually, we need to take into account the wider seafront when we're looking at an individual part of a jigsaw puzzle. So it is about how it blends and fits that wider sense of placemaking within the seafront generally. There was a comment made around need indoor uses for wet weather. Absolutely. Of course, we've got ocean there. There was also a mention about bowling. Well, again, we've got that in ocean. It's not to say there aren't other possible inside uses, but there are certainly some there. There was a question around comment around Queen's Drive temporary uses and where that idea came from, and the fact that it has been a success. So that was initiated through members who wanted to ensure that the site was kept active. But in terms of the delivery of it, that was a really good example of officers across all of the council. So whether it be my area or what's now my area, whether it be street scene, whether it be other areas, that was a good example of officers across all services coming together, but initiated through members wanting to keep the site active. There was a mention of Coast Watch. I don't have the detail on that at the moment, although it is a historical arrangement, and I believe there's no rent that's payable to the council, but it is a historical arrangement, so we can always come back to that as a subsequent meeting if you'd like. But in terms of providing them with a tower within the new scheme, whatever that might be, that had always been part of it. So it had been agreed at the very beginning that they would be part of that. I'm almost there. There's been lots of references to the consultation, which is indeed why I raised it within my presentation at the beginning, because there's lots of it, but it doesn't give that clarity that you'd expect that amount of consultation to give. It is about choices, and there's a choice there for members in terms of that consultation to date, and whether further consultation would be needed. There was a reference to extending the current play park. Yeah, that's a possibility. There are cost implications. There's also the issue of the temporary planning consent with a time limit against it. So, and there would, I assume, although I'm making a judgment here, but I'm assuming there would need to be a variation to that planning to allow for that. But that's ultimately a member decision again. And in terms of, yeah, I suppose picking up on the Coast Watch issue again, yes, the idea of them remaining on that site was a sort of an agreement from the very beginning. I think hopefully I picked up on the main points.
Yeah, I think so, Tim. Thank you, thank you for all of those observations as well. Can I just ask you a couple, just looking ahead to next year, because we have got to do that. Clearly, I don't think we're going to make, I'm suspecting that the way we're going is that nobody wants to make a major strategic decision about building a vast new complex of any kind, especially since we just bought one down there for next year. But we're obviously concerned, aren't we, with how the next summer season looks. So what do you think, Tim? I mean, what kind of deadlines are we going to have to hit? Who do we think's coming back? I mean, without going to commercial detail, we're confident there'll be people wanting to come back to those kind of, pop-up slots, so to speak. Are there other attractions we could get in time? Sorry about that. So are you all right there? Are you? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yes, thank you. I was clearly talking to myself. So in terms of next summer, we need to be making decisions over the course of the next month or two. Following this meeting, I think probably the next step is for myself and some of my team to meet with Councillor Hayward initially and just sort of scope out just some sort of initial thoughts. But but yes, we understand that the existing traders would like to be there. But there is a question we have regarding the need to tender, so to do things in a slightly more formal way, because this clearly is going on for longer than was originally intended. But that is something that it may well be worth picking up on a specific agenda item on a future meeting. But yeah, we need to be clear this side of Christmas in terms of what the plans are for next year.
Okay,
but ultimately, it needs to be driven again by members. Are you looking for something that's, well, members, and I say it probably needs to be driven by what's happening with COVID next spring, but which is the big unknown at this stage. But are we looking for uses that are in line with previous years, or are you looking for something slightly different? There may or may not be cost implications of that.
Okay, again, thank you very much for that, Tim. And again, just to say, if there are members of the public, anybody else, officers indeed, who've got any sort of ideas at the back of their head for anything that you think might be useful for us to consider for next year, do please let us know. That would be very welcome. So I haven't got anybody else there speaking at the moment, unless anybody else has got any direct questions they'd want to ask of Tim or Mark before we move on. So it's all looking pretty low, no blue hands at the moment. Okay, so we need to make a decision, really. This item was called Way Forward. In fact, this item was agenda item 6, I think, which was Tim's report, and we've just kind of elided into agenda item 7, the way forward. We ought really to do something formal now. I think if I can just look at my notes of things that it looks as if we should think of doing, and I think Tim's captured them quite well. The chronology of events that's been presented, clearly some people would like to add in detail to that or ask about that. So my suggestion, probably on both Tim's report and the chronology of events, is that we note them for this meeting and that we bring them back next time in case anybody wants to add anything else in there that we can then that we can then add, and then obviously what we create here becomes a bit of a Bible, doesn't it, for the future as well, to get that stuff in the past dealt with. Another question which I wonder if members of the committee would like to consider, and it keeps coming up, is does the Ocean Centre now need to come under the purview of this committee? Because obviously since we set up these terms of reference, we've bought the Ocean Centre, which was, formally reported the first time to council last week, although there have been press releases. Can I ask members of the committee what they think about that?
I'm happy to come in, Chair. From a personal view, I think it's so intrinsically linked, and its future will be bound up with the other offerings on Queen Drive space. I think not to include it would be remiss, because it's just part and parcel of the Queen's Drive, as my personal view. But because there are so many changes happening, and one hopes that the current tenant stays in there and generates lots of revenue for the council, because that's why an investment was made. Things may change in the future, completely outside of our control. So I think not to include it, we will miss a trick. Including it really detracts nothing from what we're doing. It's another, one would argue, a separate agenda item on any forward agendas. And it may well be this group has to meet more often in public to go through some of these nitty-gritty issues. But I think more will be lost by not including it than by leaving it as an outside thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Nick Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I support what Councillor Hayward has been saying about. I think it is, and I also support what I said before the Ocean debate last week at Cabinet. I think it is absolutely essential that we include the Ocean building into any thoughts about Queen's Drive. We're obviously in a very difficult situation with COVID that I think is going to go on a lot longer than we would like to hope. But I think there are opportunities, and there are opportunities to be creative there. And for example, my comment about the Coast Watch earlier on, they were asking about some form of place for training and safety and so on. Perhaps we could consider something in the Ocean building for them. We must use that building in the most creative and sensible and effective way possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joe Wibley, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to agree with two previous colleagues. It's a leisure and tourism asset. Hopefully that's what Queen's Drive space will become. So they are, as has been said, linked. So I would support doing that entirely and propose that we vote on that.
Okay, I'll take that as a proposal then, Joe. Thank you. Coming to Megan Armstrong, please.
Yeah, just to agree with the previous speakers, I agree that Ocean should come along in with all this as well. Thank you.
Okay, are you happy to second that, Megan?
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Ollie Davey, please.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to agree with everybody else. I mean, Tim's already pointed out it is an undercover attraction already, and therefore, it can be part of the mix that we're offering along the seafront. So definitely should be part of the overall offer.
Okay, thank you. Ollie, Dan Ledger, please.
More of a housekeeping kind of point. Will this be a recommendation to Cabinet or Council?
Right, so this is set up to be, our committee is making recommendations initially to Cabinet. I'm wondering at this stage whether we need to make a decision that this is a recommendation at this stage to Cabinet, because we're going to have to, quite possibly before the next Cabinet can discuss this, I'm hoping we'll have another meeting anyway and there'll be more recommendations. Now, I don't know whether Chris or Mark or Alethea would have any comments on that, but are we able just to do a vote on that now?
The assumption, Chair, would be that it would be recommendations through to Cabinet, unless it was just the way you want to regulate your own business, in which case it can just be a decision about how you're going to conduct your own business going forward. But for example, the ocean element of it would be a recommendation to Cabinet, because it would technically expand the area under which the terms of reference were being considered.
Okay, thanks, Mark, very much. Right, so we have a proposer and a seconder that the Ocean Centre is henceforth considered within this Queen's Drive committee. Can we, by the means of the green tick for yes, red cross for no, agree to that going forward as a recommendation to Cabinet, please?
I've ticked on that
Okay,
one.
so you've
Yeah.
got
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I think we've got the vote through there.
got 9 votes that the ocean is included.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Alethea. I think the other thing we're going to have to do before the next committee is work out who's on this committee. We need to work out who the voting members are and who they're not. And apologies that there's been a bit of confusion on that today, but it hasn't caused any problems thus far. Now, unless anybody else wants to speak on any other subject, I think we should probably wind down. Now, the big issue for me is when we next meet. Now, the sort of absolute buccaneer in me wants to meet in a fortnight, but I do know that that's going to be completely impossible, because we've got to publish the agenda tomorrow morning or something to do that lawfully. So can I suggest that we look at a meeting on perhaps either Tuesday, well, I think, and sorry, Nick, because you'll have overview that day as well, Tuesday the 10th of November or Thursday the 12th as a next option. So can I just leave that idea hanging for a moment before coming back to Councillor Eileen Wragg, please?
Just to say, Chair, I think this has been extremely useful, very, very helpful from a public viewpoint, and in complete contrast to what preceded it, where there were meetings behind closed doors, so secret I can't even remember the name of the group. I was on it for a while, for a few years. So this new open approach, I think people in Exmouth and beyond will welcome very much indeed. And I'd like to thank you, Chair, for chairing it so very fairly and letting everybody feel they've had the full opportunity to speak and put forward their ideas and concerns. So thank you for that.
That's very kind of you. Thank you, Eileen. And well, then finally from me, just leaving that thought hanging, I suppose I ought really to ask all of you on the committee, are you, if we now do this in 4 weeks, either Tuesday the 10th or Thursday the 12th, just by a show of hands on the yeses, greens, is that okay for all of you, or anybody want to amend that?
Chair, it's Megan here.
Yes, Megan, please.
I couldn't do the Tuesday morning, I'm afraid, but any other time.
Okay.
Or Thursday, after the Tuesday afternoon or Thursday. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, right, thank you. That's noted. So with that noted, is everybody happy for us to meet again on one of those 2 days? Green tick for yes, please. Red cross for no. How are we doing, Alethea?
You've got Councillor Gazzard waiting to speak.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I've lost track of my way there. Yes, Steve Gazzard, please. Come on, please. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wouldn't be able to do the 12th of November.
Okay, this is narrowing down to the, what was it? You were a problem with the afternoon of the 10th, no, Megan, or was it the morning?
No, it's the morning. I can't do the morning.
Okay. Well, let's try for the afternoon of the 10th. And at the moment, I think we've got an agreement that that's when we should next meet. In which case, unless anybody else has got... Oh, yes, please, Alethea, go on.
I was only going to say you've got 8 members voting positively for that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Right. I won't drone on. Thank you so much all for coming here today, for all your contributions, members of the public, Exmouth people, members of the council, both inside and outside of this particular committee. As they say at the end of Casablanca, I hope this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and let's build on from here. That brings our meeting to an end, and thank you for taking part. Can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live, and until then your comments will be heard. So careful now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Have a lovely day.